Park and Rec for Maplewood on January 20th to order at 6:15. We do not have a quorum. We will not be approving the minutes. We are going to move the goal setting discussion forward to February, but Audra is going to make a presentation on the final recommendations for the Park and Rec Task Force. Is that it?
Yep.
And Terry is here and I'm here.
Correct. Thank you so much, Chair. Yes, we are. I actually am, even though we won't be able to make a formal recommendation on the final recommendations of both the Nature Center and the Recreation Programming Task Force, I think it's important for us to go over what their final recommendations are. And I had promised the commission we would bring those back to you. We went through them in quite a lot of detail at the last meeting, and we were waiting to see if the results of the community survey would make a difference in the recommendations. And, you know, Neil, you can jump in here if you want, but they really haven't changed a lot. There was a few tweaks, but it was really helpful and important to go over the results of the survey to give some context to what we've been working on. So I'm just going to give a brief recap of what these task forces are and what we've been talking about. Basically, due to COVID and budget restrictions, the decision was made to not resume Parks and Recreation programming or reopen the Nature Center in 2020 and 2021. Right now, currently, there aren't plans to open them. And so at their meeting in June, the City Council determined that they would like to engage Maplewood residents and regional partners to find a more sustainable model for recreation programming and reopening the Nature Center. And so the task forces, there was a quite involved process, and people applied to be members of these task forces, and they consisted of residents and partners from education, local government, the community, and people with a general interest in environmental education, natural resources protection, and recreation programming. And among the task force's goals were to review existing programming, services, and operating budgets, review possible programming alternatives, and identify possible funding partners to help pay for amenities with a regional focus and or draw. And another goal that was included was ensuring future programming was culturally relevant to the diverse members of our East Metro community. So it was a big ask, a big undertaking, and we were very fortunate to get great members for both task forces, and they've been meeting since September of this year. They wrapped up in December, and we had one final meeting just these past couple of weeks, and the Recreation Programming Task Force actually just wrapped things up last night. So this is hot off the press for you. And so they're pulling it together to share not only with the Parks Commission, but with the City Council next Monday at their meeting. So with that, I'm just going to pull up a presentation that will be, and I'm going to share my screen here, presentation that will be going to the City Council on next Monday, and just going to go through it briefly with you. And one thing I will add to the survey results and the task force recommendations, we will have members of each task force will be presenting. So that's another piece that isn't here tonight, but members from each are going to get up and tell their story and their experience and things that were important to them during this process. So I recommend everyone tune into the City Council meeting to get more of that background. But for tonight, we are going to start with the survey results, because that was one thing we were waiting on for these final recommendations. Can everyone see my screen? Did they see the full slide?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when we did with the survey, it was a survey about many, many things in the city, but we're focusing on the ones for Parks and Recreation and Nature Center and environmental programming. And overall, you can see the rating for city parks was great at 85% satisfaction rate and 82% for overall quality of parks and recreation opportunities. So we were really happy to see that people valuing parks and recreation and the amenities that we have in Maplewood. As far as the YMCA Community Center, 79% were favorable of the quality of recreation centers and facilities. And if there's one you want me to stop on, just let me know. 83% favorable rate for the availability of paths and walking trails. And just to make note, that's higher than the national benchmark. So this is a survey that's done all over the country with different cities. So we did really well in that category. As far as natural environment, 80% favorable rating for overall quality of the natural environment. And that was down a little bit from the last time, but it's still a really high, good score. And then 77% overall preservation of natural areas, open space, and green belts. And we think that's partly to do with the fact that we did put a focus, and we worked with communications to create some videos of places people could go they might not have thought of during COVID, looking to get away and go out to some of the preserves and some of the trails that are kind of off the beaten path, pun intended. So, and then as far as there was a question asked, how should the city pay for recreation programs and nature center educational events in the future? And that was intentionally put into the survey to get feedback. And only 5% said that they were in favor of completely outsourcing or privatizing recreation and nature center events. 38% were in favor of creating cost-sharing partnerships. 26% for increasing partnership participant fees, and 31% for keeping the current funding system, even if it caused a property tax increase. So those were somewhat surprising findings. It reflects that the community is willing to find a way to have these opportunities in the city. So any questions so far? I know sometimes I go quickly.
Do we have scholarships and stuff for the nature center like we do with sports and stuff for kids who, if we do an increased participant fee, would kids still be able to participate if they couldn't afford it?
Yeah, and that applied when we had the scholarship program. It applied to all youth programming. So a nature center program, a lot of
it goes with this too. Okay.
Smaller, but absolutely. So if you qualify for that and you're a resident, we'd pay 2/3 of the cost with the scholarship dollars, and a resident would pay 1/3.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. And then on to, like I said, this is just a big overview, and there will be more talking points. So what I thought I would do is just kind of go over the slides and the overview, and then I also do have the documents with the final recommendations, and I'll just kind of scroll through those a little quicker, but I thought this is a good way to give you an overview of both task forces together. So something that came out of the Nature Center recommendations, we divided the recommendations into short-term, middle, and long-term goals and recommendations. And for the Nature Center, as it referred to the building, it was really important to the task force to have the building open in spring of 2021 in some fashion, pending COVID guidelines, of course, but just having some kind of presence in the building this spring. And it was really important to the task force that we continue maintaining the trails, the grounds in the building, and just keeping an eye on it and making sure it doesn't fall into disrepair. In the medium term for building and facilities, the task force wanted us to explore more permanent uses for buildings. Daycare was mentioned, but it also had been a coffee shop, some other group coming in and programming, just getting something in the facility to have it up and running. So it wasn't just for a daycare, but there were several other options. Then identifying rental options for nature kits, GPS, etc. And what that means is, even if the building's not open with programming, that we could have someone on site that could have like kits, like a pond kit, or things for going on some kind of small geocache on the property, or anything where people could get self-guided recreation opportunities, and they could come and check those out and go out and enjoy the Nature Center grounds and get some benefit from that. And then as far as partnerships, that was another category. It was important to the group to meet with other nature centers and really find out how can we partner, look for synergies to work together, and even maybe researching the Three Rivers model, where we would form some kind of coalition for the East Metro area, and do some programming strength in numbers. And then short-term operations contract, well, maybe somebody comes in the meantime and they contract out for environmental services or nature programs just to continue to offer them. So those were all options that they thought were important to consider. Any questions on those?
Mhm.
Okay. And then business models, that was another category. And for the Nature Center, they recommended looking at establishing a nonprofit that could possibly run the Nature Center eventually, doing some kind of annual fundraiser events like a gala or something that really was focused on raising substantial amounts of money for the Nature Center, exploring grant opportunities, whether that would be staff or volunteers that would be willing to do it, like the Friends of Maplewood Nature group, if there'd be someone to spearhead that, all possibilities. Sustainer donor programs like NPR has, which is Minnesota Public Radio. And then expand volunteer opportunities for operations. So tying into a core group of volunteers to maybe help with some of the things that need to happen to run the Nature Center that they're meant to be staff for, but volunteers could do. So any questions on those?
No.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to move quickly on to, and it's up to you. Do you want me to finish with the broad recommendations for Parks and Recreation, or would you like me to pull up the full list of the Nature Center ones and keep them separate? I'm open to whichever way makes more sense for you.
Audra, did the Nature Center have extended funding, like going back to the city council for funds or referendum or something?
They did, yes. They had those options were actually both recommendations for recreation programming, and Nature Center was explore having a referendum to increase funding or have the city council approve some kind of funding going back into the budget for both Nature Center programming and recreation programming in 2021. So those were both recommendations. So maybe I'll just keep going with this and then we can go back and do a little deeper dive if need be. And then just to let you know, the full final recommendations will be, I can email them to you. Like I said, we just were wrapping up one packet of today, so I couldn't include it in your packet, but they will be on the website, the task force website, for people to look at as well. So going back to Parks and Recreation recommendations for the physical assets, it'd be evaluate gym usage rates and fee structures for District 623 school district and the YMCA, just seeing what everyone else is charging and what things cost. So maybe that everybody's on the same page and not everybody's doing this or that. Continuing to evaluate existing rinks, buildings, fields, and how can we continue to maintain them at a high level and what that would entail. They had suggested having a map out the parks and amenities, make a really easy, usable map that people can access online and just be able to see where everything is and really get the word out of what we have. And then ID groups with space needs, like how can we fill the needs? So look for other groups that are looking for fields to rent for lacrosse or soccer or baseball and their groups, and can we help them with that space and what would that look like? So any questions there? Neil, if you have anything to add, jump in. Okay.
So the District 623, is that Edgerton School area?
That's actually, yep, sorry, it's brief on the slide here, but that's actually the Roseville School District. So that would be Edgerton, and also because Roseville is our partner city and they do a lot of similar things to what we've done in the past, just to see what they're doing with their community gyms. And they have a similar community gym setup like we did for Carver and Edgerton. So it would be just looking to see what they're doing and find out what the YMCA is doing and make sure everyone's on the same page. Yeah.
Talk with them more too. I'd like to go in on something like that.
Sure. And then as far as programming, do a deeper dive on demographics and see really who our audience is and what the needs are of the community, and evaluate which sports are growing, what's the next, big thing to come out that maybe we could get a handle on and get out ahead of. and find a way to fill that need, and maybe see what other communities are doing or where their gaps are, and then what we could fill in and offer that isn't currently being offered. And there are several more for program, but these are just some highlights of what was recommended. And then for partnerships, which would be, important going forward. They always have been. We have a history of great partnerships, but even more so now. In the short term, just review all the JPAs, and that would be joint power agreements that we have with school districts and other entities and associations. Evaluate the current YMCA partnership that we have, and what could that look like going into the future, and how we could improve on it or change it. Identifying potential future partners that we don't currently partner with. Exploring information, sharing with other cities. And this was an idea of kind of creating a database of what we have in needs and fields and things that we have, and working to create that with other cities. So we're all kind of in tune and in touch with each other of what facilities and things we have, and what programs are being offered. And again, Neil, if you have anything you want to add to that, feel free. Let's see. In the medium term, which would be, up to the next 18 months, would be maintain and expand those school partnerships, if possible. And then for the business models, stronger advocacy. It was really stressed by some of the task force members that, this isn't just our parks, and it's not just a park, it's our community, and it's why people move and live where they live, because the, parks and the recreation programming is important to them. And that's what creates a sense of community. So, and then what partners are best at delivering certain activities, and just figuring out who does what best and find out what we do best. Plan for more demand with weather and easing of COVID. There is talk of once the COVID restrictions are finally lifted, people are going to really be interested in getting out and doing things and having programs. And there's going to be a big, we have to anticipate that and make sure we get ahead of that to see if we can meet the needs of what the community is looking for. And then stay in touch with the employee pool. That was one where like our core group of seasonal, casual, part-time employees, we had so many for different sports throughout the year. And when things were put on hold, Neil did a good job of still maintaining contact with scorekeepers, referees, other officials, and just keeping them up to date where we are, so we still have those resources. So no matter what way we end up going, what direction, we'd still have those people on hand to fit them in and help with programming, because that's a big part of recreation programming, especially with sports, is getting instructors and officials and referees and the people that make them go. And so
and for the special events and things like that too, is trying to keep them, same thing, keeping them in touch. And that way, if we do, community events and more, some more outreach and special events, being able to still have the pool to pull from, hopefully, for those as well.
Yeah. Good point. And then regional cooperatives was another category. And it was really important, especially for the rec programming task force, would be to identify affinity group partners, identify and share programming with other communities, and looking into, can software systems and documents be shared? Can we find some synergies among registration or the way things are offered, so one city isn't doing everything by themselves, but kind of sharing those across the way, or even with just other associations or groups. In the medium term, it would be leverage joint marketing with regional and state partners, finding a way to get the word out and promote programs. And then financing. One recommendation was learn about the YMCA finances and their business model. Value-added higher level services. That would be maybe offering something that's a little more intensive and more expensive, but has more specialized programming involved that people might be interested in. More sponsorship and grant opportunities. And one that was mentioned was, what's the value of Adopt a Park? And just to give you a little background, I think Terry and Dorothy, but Adopt a Park is our program that we have where anybody in the community, an organization, or just one person, a household, can adopt one of our parks. And they enter into an agreement with us to clean up litter and look for things and just take care of that park. And then, we have a cleanup every year, an annual cleanup where everyone gets together. And even if you don't adopt a park, you can just come on the one day and help keep the parks beautiful. And it's really essential for us with all of our parks and open spaces to have that volunteer help. And someone wanted us to qualify what that would be as far as the time and energy and what that would mean money-wise for people that are helping us take care of the parks. So, and then 4th of July is a community engagement launch point. We've had to stop our community outreach events, except for the ones that we did online this past fall. And so, just what is community outreach going to look like? And that's really important to residents and the city. And so just the 4th of July being maybe where we, look at focusing some community engagement and moving on from there. So any questions on that? That would also involve sponsorships and promotion from businesses. So hopefully they would help fund the 4th of July, make it a, really get the word out that we're looking for groups and businesses to sponsor the cost of putting on the 4th of July.
And Audra, I don't see the referendum or going back to the city council for funding.
Yeah, that one did get put on the slide. Again, these are the slides that I got that are going to, and I can make the recommendation that maybe they add those for the presentation. They just weren't on the slides for tonight. But yes, absolutely. One of the considerations was to look at going out for a referendum and then, or to put financing back, or funds back into the 2021 budget for recreation programming for 2021, some kind of amount.
Do we not want to put that on the face of city council, or slide it under the radar?
Oh yeah, I'm not sure why they weren't added to the slides. Like I said, I was able to get them, and they may be tweaking them as we go. They were just kind enough to let me use them for the meeting tonight, okay, just because they were pulling them together. But that's why I have the complete list, and that those are actually absolutely on there, and I'll pull those up in a minute so we can go through the financing section. So we'll touch on that. It's just not on the PowerPoint, but I think it's because the other people are going to be talking about it. Didn't want to cloud up the slides too much. Okay, and then Dorothy knows a lot about this one, but it's the values and philosophy for Parks and Recreation. We have a very strong vision and mission statement in Parks and Recreation, and that kind of is behind everything that we do. And so just focusing on the role of Parks and Recreation in our lives, engage diverse populations' needs, more closely align public safety with public safety, especially MAC input. And MAC stands for the Multicultural Advisory Committee. That's something that public safety has, and reaching out to them and kind of looking at their model and maybe getting some feedback and input from them in the future would be really helpful in making sure that we're meeting the needs of everyone in the community. And then also a recommendation was better understand the WISE model for sharing and incorporating values. Chris Cost from the Y had come to the task force meeting and kind of given a presentation on the WISE philosophy and their values and programming, and just the group recommended that we really take a good look at that and understanding what motivates them and how they make decisions to better inform us when we're moving forward. So
Audra, can I make a request? I don't know if it's appropriate in this meeting, but can you send me the mission and value statement for Park and Rec? And can we include that in the packet, or is that?
For the council packet, I believe the council packet has gone out, but okay. I think they probably could include it day of. I will check with Mike Sable about that.
But if you can send it to, if you'd send it to me, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. Because I can look at it.
Yep. I know those are still in a work in progress. It's kind of with the deadlines, it was hurry up and put together, but yeah. So, all right. And then I'm actually going to I'm going to share my screen a little bit more here, and if you can be patient with me. And then I'm going to I'll pull up the Nature Center first, and let me know if everyone can see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is the entire list of them. Like I said, it was really long, so to put these all on and have you go through them again when we did at the previous meeting, I thought it would be better just to kind of scroll through. But physical asset, the best use of the building, they were divided into short term, and that could be 6 months or 6 to 12 months, just kind of a guideline. But what I'm going to do, and it named out the partners, it mentioned Watershed District in detail, not just partners, but so let me know. I'm going to move on. And one thing they mentioned was using technology for programming in place of physically being there. And one thing is the tree trek program, which Friends of Maplewood Nature is looking to already add to the Nature Center site. They're just in the creating stages of adding a tree trek program. So, and then partnerships, I'm going to turn to the next page here. And they go into more detail of what that Three Rivers Park model might be, working with Ramsey County and other cities to make an East Metro collaborative, kind of in the same vein as Three Rivers as a possibility. Okay, and then in the medium term, again, it gets into more detail about working with the school districts, reaching out again to ECFE programming, working with the Historical Society, partnering and supporting them. They have a lot of synergies between the two nature programs and the Brintrop Farm, for those of you who don't know where that is. And so they're looking at doing some programming at the farm or having them help out with things. And then with the business model, I think we pretty much covered that. One was they wanted us to consider, again, a delivery service with the Nature Center, bringing nature to them, to the schools. That was part of the Nature Center master plan. And it's something that the task force still recommended that could be done. And then here under the financial investments, I wanted to skip to this, would be in the short term, establish a donation fund and fundraising, a give to the max with the Friends group, and exploring established grant opportunities with Met Council, the DNR, Lions Club, like all different kinds of potential options to do that. Just really, and then the grant to fund a naturalist. There have been some positions that are 1 or 2 years that can be funded through grants. So they talked about doing that. And then going to the long term, I wanted to let you know, Dorothy, that it is there.
Okay.
Let's see. Consider a citywide referendum on funding for the Nature Center. What does it take to do it? Use the community survey to inform the decision. And again, the community survey, we went over those results, and so that would speak to when only 5% wanted to completely privatize it. So the other options would all be part of it, and then creating a referendum was one of the options the group recommended. And then, yep. So that will give you a little bit of background there, and then I will share a little more detail with the other group, just to show you that it's in detail. And if there's a certain page you want to look for or you're interested in, feel free to stop me. But again, with the physical assets, it just went into more detail of, just making sure we're inspecting what the Nature Center and making sure things don't fall into disrepair, and maintaining at the high level that we do, evaluating all our facilities and what we can do, and then creating that inventory map, just a map of all the existing parks and amenities, and using GIS mapping tools. So that was a little more detail with there. One important thing was in the medium term was to recommend using the master plan to guide decision making on use of facilities. Just deciding, is pickleball the next big thing, and is that what we should focus on, or what activity should it be? And then in the long term, I'll just touch on that one really quick, is recommend staff identify groups who are looking for space and provide for their needs. So like what Wakefield, what would the rental program at the Wakefield community look like in the future? And and who would be using it, and how would we do that going forward. And again, with the partnership. And hi, welcome, Commissioner Brandon. I'm just letting you know, we did go through a presentation overview, and this is just the detailed nuts and bolts of all the recommendations that you've seen at the last meeting. They haven't really changed a whole lot. They've been tweaked a little bit, but just going through some key points after the presentation, just so people can see that there is more to it than just the slides that I presented tonight. I think that's we covered that pretty much. And again, I'll just touch on this one, identifying the next big need so we can be ahead of the curve. And I mentioned that previously, and someone mentioned how Blaine Sports Center was established 20 years ago for soccer. And now it's, the big thing. Back then it was one of a kind, and now it's the premier soccer complex. So what could we find that could be Maplewood's key to what we do the best? And then the business model, we went over that pretty much, again, staying in contact with the existing pool of employees, talked about that. I think we covered actually all of those. And then looking into the regional cooperatives. Nope, covered that too. One thing was sharing the Google Doc of all the information that I talked to you about, so everyone can be on the same page and we can have information sharing. I thought that was really important. If we're going to do, regional partnerships and doing joint publications instead of just us offering our rec brochure by ourselves, partnering with other cities or community education or even the watershed, and just find some ways to cost share, because publication can be expensive, and even going so far as doing it online but doing things together so it's a bigger draw for people to come and look at everything that's being offered in the area. And then in financial investments, I'll focus on this one a little because you had questions about it. We talked about the first one there, and then potentially charging more for a higher level of service. We talked about that. And then communicate the changes to the Parks and Rec budget to the community. This was important to this group. Some people felt the community maybe didn't know that it wasn't just because of COVID that programming was paused, but there was a decision made to suspend recreation programming and then find out how we could get back to the pre-COVID levels, because it's an important service, and seeing if they could provide some level of service to maintain funding to maintain levels of service. And that referred to if the city would be willing to put money into the budget or on some level to start programming again. That was just one of the recommendations. And they just wanted to really understand the voice of the public via the survey. And so we went over that. Looking at all the sponsorship opportunities we've had. Again, we've always looked for sponsorships. Our communications department did a really good job, Joe Sheeran, with going out and trying to get those sponsorships, but just putting an added effort into seeing what we could come up with. And then in the medium term, again, recommend identifying sources of money from healthcare donations, joint marketing efforts, again, leverage events like the 4th of July for more input and sponsorship from the community. And then the long-term one, Dorothy, this is the one you were asking about, was we recommend considering a public referendum on parks and open space, and then consider restoring existing funding for programming. So there was the one for some kind of funding, and then there was also in the long term, the recommendation to restore it to the levels that it was at to continue. So I think we covered the values and philosophies and pretty well with the discussion. And the last 2 points for that would be recommend the need to be flexible if perceptions and attitudes change. And you, as always, recommend using the master plan that was put together in 2015, using those values and the plan as a guide for what we do. Any questions on that? I kind of flew through it again. I know it's a lot of information, but this will be posted on the task force website, and I will email copies of these to you after the meeting so that you have those. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. So a lot of information your way, and any discussion you want to have. Again, we have 3 members, so we don't have a quorum. So as Dorothy said in the beginning, we won't be making an official recommendation, but still thoughts and comments are much appreciated. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to the commission.
What's the next thing on the agenda? I don't have it.
Well, before we do that, does anyone have any questions or want
Any
any
questions or?
Yeah,
I don't know. who
I'm
else-
good.
I had a question. We're talking about, or I saw something about a referendum, and I guess, what is the? I mean, I think referendums have to be for like specific things, and operating budget can't be referendum. And I'm not sure that what the intent was there, but I know that we've had this discussion in the past, and I just I just wanted to make sure that, but at least my opinion on that is that I expressed that. So
Sure. Okay.
I think during the task force meetings, several times it was brought up that back in the day, 1990, 95, there was a $5 million referendum in Maplewood to preserve open space. And there was talk and consideration that that kind of interest might still be there. Maybe referendum is the wrong term to use. But
Well-
that's what came out of the task force.
right. I mean, I'm not opposed to a referendum. I'm just saying that if, in my opinion, again, if you're going to do a referendum, you need to have like specific things that aren't getting done, like a park or various things that you can say these are things that aren't getting done, and very specific things that not like an operating budget, because it just, you can't sustain that. You need some sustainable source of funding, and then if that's not enough to do the big things, or a big project or a few big projects, at least that's what it was used for then. We had this the big referendum for the open space, and they acquired a whole lot of property, and part of the problem with that one was we acquired a lot of property, but we had no budget to really do any development or maintenance or stuff like that. So if we go pursue a referendum, we really need to do some good thinking about what that means, and what are the long-term repercussions.
And I would point out that it is under the long-term recommendation. It's not 6 to 8 months or 12 months. It's out long enough that there would be time to consider what that would be.
Right. And I only raise this as, just to give you a viewpoint of,
And that's good.
I was around just after that. And, I think it was great to acquire all the property. You can't have, property is not something that, comes back. Once it's sold, it's gone. So I'm not saying it was a bad thing. I'm just saying that, we need to be careful about how we pursue those kind of things.
Anyone else?
Are there any other comments or questions? Forget.
And with me.
Okay, well, we don't have a quorum, so we can't make the recommendation to forward it to the city council. It is going to be presented at the city council on Monday. So we'll have to see how that gets worded and presented.
Yep. And you're
What's our
welcome to
next-
give your thoughts at the meeting to the public. It's just, it wouldn't be an official recommendum because we don't have a quorum, but this is just kind of informational meeting tonight then.
Okay, and what's our next item?
It would have been the starting the goal setting. We usually start at the January meeting and finish in February, but you had made the decision in the beginning of the meeting to table that till we have a quorum present. So Craig, just letting you know that was the decision that Dorothy and Terry, we just tabled it for the February meeting, and then what's left is a programming update, and Neil was just going to give you a quick update on the state of the rinks and how it's been going with the COVID guidelines and staff, extra things staff has been doing and to keep the public safe. So Neil, I will turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Just wanted to give a quick update. This is into our second week of being open for the warming houses. And the rinks are taking shape and getting used. It's been kind of a nice ease into the new protocols with the nice weather we've had. So there hasn't been a ton of jamming down the door to get into the warming house. We're pretty significantly restricted as far as capacity. So we've limited capacity in the warming houses. We have the chairs set up exactly as they are, and we're limiting to having anyone that's using it to 15 minutes, and then kind of rotate through, just so that way we can keep people coming in and out as needed. Staff is doing a great job making sure everything's wiped down and cleaned, and giving masks as needed. If someone doesn't have them when they come in, we put extra benches and shelves outside of the buildings to encourage people to utilize those for any non-warming rests and not putting their equipment and stuff in the buildings. Been checking with staff regularly, and there's been, knock on wood, there hasn't been any issues. Everything's been going smoothly. Everyone's respectful and understands the new restrictions we have to be able to keep them open. So it's been going good, and we're looking forward to finishing the season, and we'll see where we're at from there. So.
Okay. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.
And the next item on the agenda would be?
That would be adjournment. That's all we have. So if there's nothing else or any comments, that
anyone else have anything else they want to discuss in this little tiny group?
Well, I apologize for being so late. It just slipped my mind.
Well, I was late too, so.
Well, I'm like,
Oh, there's Nikki. Well, let's say hi to Nikki as long as she's logging on. Hi, Nikki.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Nikki.
Hi, Allie.
Hi.
Hi.
We're just ready for adjournment.
Yeah, we didn't have a quorum tonight, so we went over the recommendations, but we're going to do the goal setting at the February meeting, and we still went over everything, and we'll be taking the recommendations to council on Monday, so you'll get to see them then.
Okay. All right.
All right.
And so Dorothy, you're gonna do you're coming to that meeting?
I'll do the opening part of it, yeah.
All right. That's awesome.
I'm
Well, I
still
was so
alive.
excited to be assigned to Parks, obviously.
Right?
Yes. We're thrilled to have you.
Yeah, we're happy to see
Well,
you. All right. Well, with that, we'll let Dorothy adjourn. I'm glad you got to stop in and say hello.
Yeah.
I'm going to call for adjournment. All in favor?
Hi.
We are adjourned at 6:59. Thank you, folks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good
Bye,
night.
Have a good
everybody.
night.
See you.
Good night. Thanks, everyone.
yep, bye-bye.